Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our home room. I cannot believe we are over halfway through January already. It's moving so fast, but luckily this time of year I like it when it moves fast. January and February are always really tough months for me. The weather really affects me, so I find myself being a little less motivated, a little less energetic, things like that. But I found that the more I fight that, the worse it gets. So I just kind of allow the lazy and I trust that once spring comes, my energy will be back. And it always does. It always comes back in March and I get my energy back and then I'm feeling like myself. So hopefully for you, you're allowing yourself a little bit of rest and relaxation and not being too hard on yourself. And honestly, the same goes for our kids. I cannot tell you how many times in February we had meetings with administration about behavior and how teachers needed to be stepping it up and they were implementing some new behavior program. I myself in my classroom had to implement a new behavior program almost every February. So it gets tricky this time of year because I think we're all feeling a little weird. It's like a limbo stage. We're not really done with, winter. But so spring's not here and so everyone feels a little funky. And when we feel a little bit off, we can sometimes go to make unhealthy choices. And so we might need more boundaries with ourselves. Our kids are going through the same thing. So this time of year, you may see a little more boundary pushing because your kids might be feeling a little funky. And that just means that you have to hold and enforce boundaries a little bit more. So today, that is what I want to go over with you all is how to establish and enforce boundaries. In fact, I'm going to do this in kind of a 3-part series. So the next 3 episodes will all be about boundaries, how to establish them and how to enforce them. Um, I really would like to get us to think about boundaries a little bit differently. I think in the past, there's this idea that boundaries are self-serving, that enforcing boundaries is just for the parent or the person enforcing them. But in fact, boundaries really benefit the other person. They provide safety, which is a huge, huge benefit and a big necessity for any healthy, loving relationship. We have to have safety in that relationship, not only to feel more connected with that person, but also because then I feel safe here at home in this nice, safe, like home base, which means I can go out in the world and I can explore and I'm safe to go try things because I feel safe at home. So enforcing boundaries is one way we provide safety for our children, and they really, really need that. And there's kind of been a trend the last few years with not enforcing boundaries. We hear complaints a lot about parents really struggling enforcing boundaries, seeing kids that have not had boundaries enforced. And I totally get it because I think for generations, enforcing boundaries has been too harsh. It's been mostly punishments. And so when people are raised with harsh boundary enforcing and punishments, they tend to swing the other way and then really struggle with enforcing boundaries at all. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who struggled with enforcing boundaries, because I wanted that fun, happy, loving relationship in class all the time. I struggled with enforcing boundaries, but I realized it was necessary. There is a way to enforce boundaries in a kind, loving, and firm way so that it becomes a win-win for both of you. Boundaries absolutely are a benefit to our children. They help them thrive in ways that just loving them, although that is the most important and most impactful element to your child's success, having boundaries is also a very, very close number 2. It's so important that they have those boundaries so that they understand you, they know your expectations, and they feel safe and know how to act at home and then feel that they can thrive outside of the home. So today I'm going to talk about why enforcing boundaries is important. We're going to go into detail about that. And I want to offer just a different new perspective on why enforcing boundaries is so beneficial to our children. And then 2, I'm going to share my 2 favorite strategies for enforcing boundaries in a kind but firm way. So we're going to get into both of those today. Don't forget that I do have a worksheet attached below. So if you're not watching on YouTube, please make sure to download that reference sheet. It can help you follow along with visuals as I go through this little mini class. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into how enforcing boundaries benefits our children. So, I have said in the past how important it is that we prioritize the relationship with our children more than anything else when it comes to managing misbehavior. We don't want to do anything too mean or harsh or disconnecting because that relationship, that loving, strong, secure relationship that we have with our children is the biggest indicator of their success. If they have that at home, they have a secure, connected, loving, respectful, non-judgmental relationship at home, they're able to go outside into the world and thrive. So we want to make sure, even when it comes to enforcing boundaries, that we do that in a way that does not disconnect or break the relationship. So I have figured out over the years how to do that because it's kind of new and different. We are many times used to boundaries being enforced in a very harsh way. So we're going to talk about today ways to do that. We want to maintain that relationship, but it is also important we have boundaries and enforce those. And that's for two major reasons. One is it models healthy relationships for our children, and two, because it provides safety. So, as far as modeling healthy relationships, our children need to see what it means to have boundaries and enforce those boundaries with others, but also how to respect the boundaries of others. You know, when you say no, or you have a boundary, or you say, I don't like the way you're speaking to me, I'm going to walk away until we can speak kindly, that models for your children, oh, I need to not talk to people badly. I need to learn how to speak to people respectfully. And that is an important part of any healthy relationship. So, if we want our children not only to see that it's okay to have their own boundaries, but it's also important to respect other people's boundaries, the best way for them to see that is to see you modeling it as often as possible. So, that is one reason why holding and enforcing boundaries is super important. It models that good, healthy relationship with our kids. But most importantly, the biggest reason why enforcing boundaries is so important for our kids is because it provides our children with safety. You know, this relationship is different than peer relationships. We are in a parent-child relationship, which provides a leadership relationship for our kids. We are our children's leaders. So I want to think of boundaries from that perspective. How can we as leaders really provide boundaries in a safe and healthy and firm and kind way? So I want to offer a great analogy I've thought of to help you understand why enforcing boundaries benefits our children so much. So imagine you've decided that you would like to go on a trip to the Australian outback, and you'd like to go hiking on a trail you've never been to. So you do not know Australian climate and weather. You do not understand the plants there, the animals. You don't know the lay of the land. So you have no idea, but you're really interested. You'd love to go out in nature. So you think, I'm going to go join a trail guide group and go out and traipse through the trail with someone leading me down that trail that has been down that trail hundreds or thousands of times, right? So you get really excited, you pack what you need, that leader, that trail guide is telling you what you need to pack. You get out there and you're walking the trail. You feel, pretty good about this trail guide, but you really want to make sure you can trust this trail guide. I mean, your survival is on the line here. Is this someone that you can actually really trust? So, if you're not sure, guess what you're going to do? You're going to push some boundaries. You may start to not wanting to listen to the trail guide. Let's say they say, we're going to go east. And you're thinking, no, I don't think so. I'm going to see if he would go west. So you might say, actually, I know you say that it's important we go east right now, but I really think going west is important. Now, if that trail guide goes, yeah, you know what? Maybe you're right. Let's go west. What? Right? As the member in the group that knows nothing about the Australian outback, nothing about anything, the climate, the plant, nothing. That's crazy, right? So immediately you've lost a little trust in this person. Maybe you can't trust them to lead you. It also leads with maybe a little bit less respect, because now I really don't think you know what you're talking about and you're acting like you do. And it sets in a little bit of panic, right? It's because you're like, I don't know anything. The fact that they're listening to me, that gives me a little bit of anxiety. All right. So, okay, you start heading west and they're like, okay, what's going to happen next? They're going to test you again. Okay. So you start to say, oh, I know you say now is the time that we need to go ahead and set up for a campfire for the night, but I think we should keep going for another half an hour. And then say they go, oh, you know what? I think you're right. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I've completely lost trust in this guide. I do not respect this guide. I feel completely unsafe. I feel really anxious. And now I'm starting to feel a little bit of power. Maybe I have more control in this group than I realized. So now I start stepping into kind of this boss scenario, right? But then others in the group start going, well, wait, they've lost faith in the leader too. And they're thinking, well, maybe I should be in charge. So then they start being in charge. Now the whole trip, we've lost complete focus on the actual trail, learning the land, appreciating the plants, viewing the animals. Now it's all about who is in charge. So chaos starts to ensue. Everybody's feeling a little anxious, which means they're trying to find their own leader, right? Can you see how, in this case, being that nice, sturdy leader is so important? We need someone that's going to say, no, I know you may want to go west, but we are going east because I know what is in the best interest of this trail group. No, I know you think we should go for another 30 minutes, but now is the time to camp because I have done this a million times and I know what happens if we don't. It becomes dangerous very quickly. We want someone in charge telling us and giving us that safety. So our children are exactly the same way. So if we are leading in a way that we just go at the whim of whatever the people in the group or whatever our children want to do, they will lose trust, they will lose respect, and they will feel a lot pretty anxious. They're also then going to try to get power because they need somebody to be a leader. So we don't want a pushover trail guide. So let's talk about a pushover versus a boss versus a leader. So pushover leaders prioritize themselves over the group because they want to be liked. So they're going to not think about the best interests of the group and think about what's best for everyone involved, but instead they're going to think about what's best for them, and they want to be well liked. So if somebody says something, we're like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that because they think that's going to get them to like them, right? They tend to overvalue the members of the group because of that. They're listening to everybody's opinions because they're feeling unsure, right? Pushover bosses sometimes are really unsure and they let everyone know they're unsure. That also then provides a powerlessness to everyone. They don't see that person as having any power or any leadership at all. So that is going to elicit anxiety, chaos, and disrespect. So we absolutely do not want to be pushover trail guides, right? Our trail guides, we don't want them to be pushovers. It makes us nervous and anxious. However, we also don't want to swing the other way. We don't want a boss trail guide either. So a boss trail guide prioritizes themselves over the group so that they can have control. They want that power, the control. They want to do it their way. They don't really care what anybody else wants. They're there for themselves. Yeah, they've got kids, they've got some people in the group, but they're really traveling this trail because they want to be doing it. They don't really care about everyone else in the group. So they don't value the members at all. So they don't value their ideas. They don't value what actually is necessary for those people. Someone gets hurt, too bad, so sad, we're moving on. So they don't have any value for the members. And then they tend to be overpowering. They're taking all the control and all the power. So that kind of trail leader is going to elicit fear, rebellion, and sneakiness, right? So if we have somebody that's a boss that's not listening to us, and my ankle is hurt, I'm going to figure out how to sneak off to the side to take care of my ankle because he's not going to let me do it. So I got to figure out how to take care of my own needs on my own when he's not looking. So we don't want a boss as a trail leader either. So the best is to be a leader. What does a leader encompass? They prioritize the group's best interests as important number one. What is best for the group? And they've traveled the trail enough that they kind of know what's best for the group. They value the members. They do value their ideas, but they are the last word. They are the decisive ones. They're the ones that make the final call. So there's a feeling of shared power. We're working together in this group. We're a little bit like, oh, you want to go look at that plant? That is allowed right now. We have time to go look at that plant. Let's do that. So we're allowing the group to have some power and choice and control, but we're keeping the overall goal for the trail. We're keeping the safety intact, right? So this kind of leader is going to elicit trust, respect, and safety. And that is what our children are craving. So this is why enforcing boundaries is so, so important. Our children need that safety. They want that sturdy leader, which I think is what Dr. Becky calls good parenting, is being a sturdy leader. Our children want that from us so, so bad. So how do we become a sturdy leader? Not only is that mindset, adopting that mindset of being a sturdy leader, but it's also having the right strategies. So next, I'm going to get into my 2 favorite strategies for enforcing boundaries from that sturdy leadership position. So, how do we best enforce boundaries that keeps that relationship with our children really connected and intact? And today I'm going to share my 2 favorite strategies. One is saying no, which sounds simple enough, but I've got some actual ways to say no today that are helpful. And my favorite strategy, which is called what I call connected consequences. So I'm going to talk about those today, but first I want to remind you that our children are only misbehaving because they have an unmet need. So when we have an unmet need, that creates negative feelings, which can create negative behavior. And just like I gave the example with the trail guide earlier, those people on the trail were simply pushing limits or, quote, misbehaving because they were looking for a need of safety. They wanted to feel that they could be safe to travel the trail. They knew what was expected. They knew what plants to touch and when the time to campfire, and they knew they were safe, which means they could explore and they could thrive and enjoy that trip because they were held in a whole group of safety, right? They felt good there. So if you are seeing some limit pushing, then that is why our children really need those enforced boundaries. So here are some other signs of unenforced boundaries, because if you just look at the feelings and the behavior that's happening, that can usually tell you, oh, yeah, this is how my children are acting. It means they need some enforced boundaries. So signs of unenforced boundaries: children are pushing limits often. So you may start to feel a little powerless, or your power is being tested. You may feel exasperated. Oh God, why are they doing, kind of over it. You might start feeling resentful. You might start yelling or nagging or feeling walked on. And you might be thinking to yourself, why don't they just do what they're supposed to do? I'm doing everything for everyone. Why don't they just do what they're supposed to? Why aren't they listening to me? So if you're starting to feel a little bit like that, then that definitely is signs of unenforced boundaries. So let's start talking then about how to enforce those boundaries. There's 2 things actually to remember here that are really important about boundaries. One is these solutions, consequences, and saying no, only work for unenforced boundaries, for overstepping boundaries, for breaking rules. They do not work for a child seeking and having any other misbehavior. If your child is attention seeking, they need connection. They don't need a consequence. If your child is seeking power, they need choices and voice. They do not need you to just keep saying no and keeping power. So if we try to use any of these for something else, for other misbehaviors, they will not work. So keep in mind that consequences and saying no, these examples today, are only effective for overstepped boundaries, for limit pushing behavior. Another big reminder is that boundaries, healthy boundaries that we have with other people, are never about control. We cannot control our children. It is a never-ending battle. You will never win that one. So instead, boundaries simply state what you will do in a situation. They're about what you will or will not do. They are not about what you expect other people to do, because you're never going to be able to control that. So instead, it's better to then work with your own limits and figure out what your limits are and how to enforce those, or work with your children on coming up with limits and consequences that work to establish healthy routines, healthy boundaries within the home. Okay, so Again, a great reminder, healthy boundaries maintain safety and order in the home while ensuring that everyone's rights and freedoms are respected. Again, it's not about control and taking away others' freedoms. It's just ensuring that everyone's rights and freedoms are respected. Everyone in the trail, remember, looking out for the trail group's best interest. And then that's maintaining safety and order in the home. So if you keep that in mind, that helps a lot with understanding of, if I'm expecting my kid to do this, is it because I'm just trying to control or overpower the situation? Or is this actually something that maintains safety and order and ensures the rights and freedoms of everyone in the family? So that's a really good way to kind of decide whether that's a good boundary or not. So saying no is the first strategy I'm going to go over here. So there's a lot of different ways to say no. Sometimes saying no can be hard for us. And I know that's for some of you, you're going to think that feels silly, but for many of you, you really struggle with just outright saying no. So I've got 3 different ways that you can say no to your children that are a little bit softer and they deliver the message a little bit more kindly. So that's easier for a lot of you. So the first one is try again later. So this is after you've already let your children know that toys are not safe in the hallway, let's say. So you've already told them we don't have toys in the hallway, especially those Legos, right? Because they're painful when you step on them. So you've already decided toys aren't allowed in the hallway. Let's say they put their toys in the hallway and you've already told them they're not allowed to. So then you say, remember, toys aren't safe in the hallway. We had decided that. So they're going to need to go in the closet for today and you can try again tomorrow. You could also, for really young children, you can try again after lunch. You can try again tonight or after nap or in a few minutes. The actual time that you need to take the toys away doesn't really matter. It's the enforcing of taking the toys away that is the most important. So the try again later is one of my favorite strategies. If a child was in the classroom and they were coloring on the desk or something, we don't use markers to color on school property. So I'm going to have to take the markers away for now, but you can try again after lunch. So you want to make sure that they already knew that that was not allowed, that the toys were not allowed in the hallway. But once they do, and then they don't do it, instead of, again, they're pushing the limits. Then you want to say, "Ooh, I'm sorry. Remember, we're not allowed to put toys in the hallway. I have to take them away for today, but you can try to follow that rule again later." So try again later is really great. It helps you not feel like, ooh, like technology is a big one. You do not have to take technology away for a whole week to make it impactful, especially with younger children. You want those times that you take those items away to be short. It could literally be for a few minutes or for an hour or, a segment of the day. Our older children can go a little longer, but even they don't need it for a super long time. It's really just the showing that you're enforcing it that's the most important. Okay, saying no is, you can also say no by using an explanation. So for instance, if you've already told them they cannot have too much candy, but they're pushing for more candy, you can say too much candy is bad for your health, so no more candy today, and put the candy away or whatever it is. Sometimes children need that explanation and that helps them understand it and then they stop kind of pushing it because you're showing you're keeping them safe. You have a reason, you're keeping them healthy. The last way that you can say no that is really effective is to schedule it for later. So if they're trying to tell you a story or they're wanting to tell you all about their day and you're cooking dinner or you're texting someone or you're on the phone or you're talking to a friend who is over and they come up and they want to tell you something right now, they shouldn't be interrupting you and your friend. They shouldn't be interrupting your phone call. They shouldn't be interrupting your text if it's important. So you're able to say, you are allowed to say, "Ooh, I can't listen now, and I really want to hear what you have to say. How about let's share after dinner, after I'm done cooking? How about after I'm done with my text message? Let me put my phone down so I can really listen. I'm on the phone right now, so I can't listen to you. As soon as I get off the phone, I want to hear your story." So you're just scheduling it for a time when you're not busy. You are allowed to be busy, and you are allowed and should say no to your children when you are busy. They need to see that they do not need to be interrupting, people. That's not a great habit to get into. So it is absolutely okay that you tell them no for now. Let's do it after I'm not busy or not in the middle of something. All right, so saying no is a super effective way to hold those boundaries. But my favorite strategy for really helping establish good routines is called connected consequences. There's kind of 2 different ways to do consequences. We have a short form version that's called enforceable statements, and a longer version that's called cooperative conversations. But I want to talk a minute about consequences. There is kind of a new movement right now that's telling a lot of parent experts are telling parents not to use consequences, that consequences are bad. And I wholeheartedly, from the bottom of my heart, disagree. Consequences are a really, really great way to help establish routines, rules, boundaries, limits, schedules. All of those things are important for order in our family. Consequences are a really, really great way to get those things figured out. I think that most of the parenting experts want to push parents away from consequences because in the past they've been mixed up with punishments. I'm going to go into that a little more in my next episode, the difference between a consequence and a punishment. But basically, it boils down to consequences are respectful, they're revealed in advance, they're related to the misbehavior, and they are enforced consistently. So consequences absolutely are important and you're able to use them, but you just want to make sure you're only using them for overstepped boundaries and rule breaking, and they are not mean or harsh, which would be a punishment. So let's talk about two different ways to do consequences. The first one is called enforceable statements. So enforceable statements are for simple routines or safety issues, and they're really good for younger children. They focus on what you will do. So one of the sentences that I use, the sentence structures I use for enforceable statements, the most common one is I will blank when blank. So for instance, I will drive the car again when the car is quiet. So if you're having problems with a rowdy car, pull the car over and you just sit there and you'll say, I will drive again when the car is quiet. When the car gets quiet, you drive again. If it gets loud again, you pull over and you keep doing that because you refuse to drive in an unsafe car. That is a sturdy leader. A sturdy leader knows that driving in an unsafe, loud, and rowdy car is not good. So you will enforce that boundary by pulling over and waiting for it to be quiet before you will pull back out again. You might want to leave a little early on those days in case you need to do that a lot, but it is a great strategy. Another example, you can switch it around. So instead of I will when, you can say when I will. So when your teeth are brushed, I will read your bedtime story. So that is just a prompt for them instead of having to say, go brush your teeth. It also helps with our power struggle kids because you're not saying go brush your teeth. You're just saying when your teeth are brushed, I will read your bedtime story. So then you are waiting in the room until they brush their teeth. You will not start reading until the teeth are brushed. There may be other consequences that ensue from that, but it's a great way to let your children know that this is only what you will do. You are not reading books to children who don't have their teeth brushed because you don't want them falling asleep with unbrushed teeth. That is, again, for their safety and health, right? So again, just keeping very simple statements that say what you will do in an unsafe situation is a great way to communicate and enforce those boundaries with our kids. All right, the second way is a little bit more involved, and this is especially for repeated overstepped behavior. So for instance, you've taken technology away for a short amount of time. You've taken technology away maybe even for a couple of days, and they're still overstepping that technology rule. Maybe they're supposed to be off at 9 o'clock, but they repeatedly keep pushing it past 9. So this is for repeated overstepped boundaries and for older children. The focus on this is problem solving. So if you're having repeated misbehaviors, it's time to start talking to your children about it. So first you want to get on the same team with your child. Remember, if you guys are looking at this like, we're having a problem with technology. Let's figure out together how to do this. And then when you get together, you're going to get on the same team. So you're going to have the same mindset, and then you're going to share your concerns about what's going on. I'm really concerned with you not getting off at 9 o'clock. It's not good for your sleep. Again, keeping safety and health in mind. It's not good for your sleep, and it's establishing some addictive behaviors. So I really want to help get you into healthy habits. Let's talk about how we can do that. This isn't healthy. So here's my ideas. I think, we should try to start, maybe technology needs to be taken away at 8:30 instead of 9 o'clock since you're pushing it back 15 minutes, then, whatever. Or you could talk about, I think we need to take technology maybe away for a whole week. Maybe if we just don't have any technology, we start getting used to getting into bed earlier time, and that starts to establish some healthier sleep routines. So share your concerns, share your ideas, get their ideas. What do they think? Do they see that this is a problem? And then you're going to work together to come up with a consequence to try for a short time. You try that for a week, try it for a few days, then reassess. Is that working? Did it not work? Okay, it didn't work. Let's try something else. Or it did work. Great. Let's try it for, how about we try that for another week, and then we can start, making technology having technology more in the evenings. So it's really important, though, that if you're going to do that and you decide on that consequence, you follow through that consequence consistently. So if you say you're going to take technology away, you got it for 4 days, keep it away for 4 days. Do not change that, because then again, they're not seeing a sturdy leader. They're pushing for, oh, but mom, but please let me have it early. So you want to make sure whatever consequence you decide on, you are comfortable following through consistently, because they will push for that. But you have to be that sturdy leader. And you're like, no, we decided 4 days. You'll have it in 4 days. So taking away that reasonable amount of time. You do not need a really long extended time. If you know that 4 days is going to take you into the weekend when you know your child's going to need technology because you're going on a road trip, do not go into 4 days. Just limit it to 2 days. So really think through those consequences, come up with those together, and then just constantly reassess. The point of all of this is to establish healthy routines and keep safety and order in the home. That just takes practice. You've got to sometimes figure that out together. So both of these are great ways to enforce boundaries that do not mess with that relationship. They're kind and firm, but they also keep your sanity intact too, because that's an important part of enforcing boundaries also. All right, homework today is 3 questions just to get you thinking about enforcing boundaries at home in a way that you feel good about and benefits your children. So number 1, think of a boundary that you have not yet enforced. Why not? Do you have a fear of your kids not liking you? Are you unclear what your boundary actually is? Are you too busy to enforce it consistently? So really think through a misbehavior that you and your children are having right now, and it's just an overstepped boundary. They're not following a rule or a routine. So why haven't you enforced that boundary? So if you're feeling exasperated about it, you're feeling like you need to nag, you're feeling tired of doing everything for everyone, you're feeling like powerless, nobody's listening to you, it could be that it's time to enforce a boundary about that. So really think about why you haven't. And then hopefully one of the strategies I shared today will help you start to figure out a way to enforce that boundary. All right, number 2, think of a boundary that you have tried to enforce, but it was unsuccessful. Why didn't it work? Were you being maybe a boss instead of a leader? Were you and your partner enforcing different limits? It's really important you and your partner get on the same page and have the same limits. I'm going to talk about that in the next couple episodes when it comes to establishing boundaries. It's really important you and your partner are on the same page when you're enforcing limits. Is it because you have inconsistent follow through? Some days you enforce the boundary and some days you don't. Imagine being on that trail. If some days the trail guide said, no, you can't touch that plant, and some days the guide said, yeah, it's okay to touch that plant, you wouldn't know what to do. You'd be kind of lost. So someday you'd keep trying to touch the plant. So it's really important that you're consistently following through. So think through some of the boundaries that you have tried and see if you can to enforce and see if you can figure out why they haven't been working. And then the last thing is just kind of a reminder. Think of yourself as this trail leader. And if you think of yourself that way, what do your kids most need from you right now? If they were traveling the trail in the Australian outback, what do they need from you to build more safety, trust, and respect so that everyone in the family feels and acts better? Everyone's rights and freedoms are being respected. So think of yourself as that sturdy leader. What do you feel? What comes to mind when you think of what kind of boundaries your children may need right now? And remember, again, these boundaries keep our kids safe. And when they feel safe, they're able to flourish. So not only do you have children that are following more rules and routines, which makes it easier for you and it makes the house run smoothly, but they feel less anxiety because they know you've got them. They know you've got this under control. You're leading the family in a way that's in everyone's best interest. They can trust, they can let go, they can relax, and they can enjoy life instead of constantly trying to figure out what the boundaries are. That leads to a lot of anxiety and it switches the whole game. Like I said with the trail guide, now the trail is not about enjoying the trail and enjoying the animals and relaxing on the trail. It's all about figuring out what I can and can't do to try to find my safety. And you're not going to be perfect at this. Just remember that you're doing the best you can. Nothing is set in stone. And some things are new. Sometimes you're not going to know what kind of boundaries to have, and technology is a great example of that. We weren't raised with parents who gave us technology limits, so we're not really sure what to do with the kids. So imagine it again on this trail guide. If let's say you're going down the trail and the guide discovers a new path. No one's ever been down this path before. It's so interesting. We want this path. We want to travel this path, but I've never been down that before. Let's work together to travel down the path. Let's see if we can figure out how to do this in a way that benefits all of us so we're enjoying the path but also staying safe. So that's why cooperating with your kids and coming up with limits in a place that when an area that maybe is new for you is a great way to do that. You still have the final call because chances are you're going to know that path more than them, but you're still kind of discovering that together. So you want to have that nice cooperative way and working together to forge that path. It's such a great way to enforce boundaries with our kids because then they're more likely to follow those boundaries. And we know the more the rules are being followed around the home, the more peaceful that home is. All right, that is it for the week. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to tune in for the next 2 weeks where I'm going to go into the differences between consequences and punishments and give you tips for making sure that your consequences are strong and effective. And then I'm also going to go into establishing boundaries, how to make sure the boundaries you have are healthy boundaries and they're not about control, and then how to work with our partners on establishing those boundaries too. So please keep tuning in. Make sure to like or subscribe or follow on whatever platform works. And please share. This is a great free resource. I want to offer this free resource to as many parents as possible. So please make sure to share with anyone who you think would benefit.